Ice is a very original and experimental story about a man trying to find a woman who keeps getting lost in the blizzard. The crazily dancing snowflakes represented the whole of life. Her image flew past, the silver hair streaming, and was instantly swept away in the wild confusion. In the delirium of the dance, it was impossible to distinguish between the violent and the victims. Anyway, distinctions no longer mattered in a dance of death, where all the dancers spun on the edge of nothing. Each chapter feels like a reset in time, and its narration is dreamy, so it feels like a recurring nightmare in a way. Probably not selling it right, but that's sort of how it is, and it's haunting but beautiful. Ice is a bit like if Nabokov, Kafka, Calvino, and David Lynch all decided to write a story about a violent relationship. Anna Kavan writes of the obsessive paranoia of Nabokov's writing, the cynicism of Kafka's writing, the continual unfolding of Calvino's writing, and it is done from this very cinematic lens that you can kind of see there's a strong aesthetic to this book, a strong visual aesthetic to this book, which you normally wouldn't find in fiction, but more in like experimental prose or poetry. That said, many people will not like Ice because it's very dreamy, it's not strictly linear, it seems like we can't really understand or trust the narrator, so it's quite hard to get a grasp on Ice, pun intended. And I was quite surprised to see this British author from the 20th century, a woman writing in this time, could write so violently and very kind of imaginatively in a kind of immaterial way. The way that this is narrated is so abstract, and that's just not something you see in British fiction from this era, especially from British female writers from this era. So yeah, it's quite surprising, quite unique in that way. She was born in France, and I think there is more of like a French kind of appeal to this. There's a very French atmosphere to this, in that it's seen as a surrealist work of fiction. The reason I read Ice is due to its explicit reference in the Netflix film I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Anna Kavan, which I had very mixed feelings about. I really enjoyed the beginning and I really didn't like the ending. Although that film is based on an actual story called I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid, I can see that Kaufman adapted more closely from Ice by Anna Kavan. So if you liked that film, you're going to see a lot of parallels here with this. And in the same way Kaufman's film cautions against fantasies taking over one's life, it seems like a great criticism for this book. It's a book that's thrilling and confusing to read, but you won't really remember it for what it was, more just how it made you feel. Ice lacks sufficient form and development to make readers invested in its narrative for anything more than novelty, so it kind of fades in the imagination. It's a bit like if you took If on a Winter's Night a Traveller and you replaced all the comedy with horror and you took away the main narrative, which interlinked all the sub-stories, you would be reading Ice. That's the best way I can think of talking about Ice. And Ice also passed the point at me where an unreliable narrator becomes an unlikable or uninteresting narrator. You kind of just don't really care so much what's happening in the story. You don't feel empathy towards what's happening. That happened here for me, as it did with A Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes, which some people really love as well, but for me, it crossed that point where I could feel engaged. And Ice also has the cynicism that I generally dislike in Kafka. I prefer Kavan to Kafka. That said, I'm probably being harder on Ice than most readers would. I'm generally quite hard on some books, and this is one that's very original, but I think just it could be longer. It's a short read, so you're not risking anything by trying it, but I just feel like there could be more here. There is mystery that could be explored or enticed just a little bit further. But still happy I read this. It's a very surprising read. So if you like any of the books I've compared Ice to, or the film, then yeah, definitely read this, and you're in for a surprise. This is a book for when you want a surprising read that's very unpredictable. Happy reading.